So, astronauts always have a lot of work to do. They deal with breakdowns on the ship, go into outer space to repair something, conduct experiments, keep daily records, report about everything to the center of the Earth, and sometimes meet unknown mysterious things from outer space. Let's see which ones. So, you're alone in a small spaceship. You have our big planet on one side and the boundless black space on the other. You're checking instruments, doing some astronaut things, when you hear a strange knock. Someone or something is knocking on your ship. You realize that this is impossible, but then the knocking repeats. You look out of the porthole window, but don't see anyone. Then you report the incident to the dispatcher on the ground. No one knows what it could be. You've been training your stress tolerance and psyche for many years, but now you're a little nervous. Astronaut Yang Liwei first heard a mysterious knocking sound in 2003 when he was inside a small spacecraft as part of the first Chinese space mission. Yang said the sound was like hitting an iron bucket with a wooden hammer. He also noticed that the knock came neither from the outside of the ship nor from the inside. He couldn't determine its source. When Yang returned to Earth, he tried to reproduce the knock so that experts could discover its nature. But no one managed to find out what it was. A similar story repeated itself with other Chinese astronauts in 2005 and 2008. Yang's colleagues suggested that the ship could make the sound due to the hull's expansion or compression. The temperature inside the ship was very different from the temperature in outer space, and this could cause the metal hull to make a sound similar to a knock. Hey, don't knock it. Another mysterious sound was heard by NASA astronauts on Apollo 10 while orbiting the Moon. It was a strange whistle of unknown origin. One of the astronauts described it as cosmic music. The information about this incident was classified for a long time, but recently NASA has explained the mystery. The whistling sound was just some radio interference. But it doesn't mean there are no creepy sounds in space. NASA has launched many research probes into the boundless depths of space. One probe recorded the sounds of Jupiter, another the sounds of Saturn. The third probe recorded dust particles and small rocks crashing into the ship. Technically, these are not sounds because sound waves cannot exist in space. The ships recorded radio emissions from various objects, and then scientists transformed these waves into sounds. And the coolest thing is that you can find all this on the internet. There were many rumors and legends about Neil Armstrong and his landing on the Moon. One of the most popular myths tells how the astronaut saw strange spaceships on the Moon. The astronaut never commented on this case, and his testimony and the data he gave to the communication center on Earth was classified. But, according to the legend, Armstrong said creepy words when he was on the Earth satellite and saw something. "These babies were huge, sir. Enormous. You wouldn't believe it. I'm telling you, there are other spacecraft out here, lined up on the far side of the crater's edge. They're on the Moon watching us." After that, he returned to the spaceship and flew to Earth. Yep, that smells like an urban legend for sure. In 2005, the commander of the International Space Station, Leroy Chiao, saw strange lights during a spacewalk. He described them as a set of white lights that rose from Earth and passed through him. His colleagues reported that it could have been an optical illusion caused by many fishing boats with searchlights along the coast of South America. Leroy saw the lights from the boats refracting and passing through his helmet. He doubted this version because he was at an altitude of 230 miles and the boats had to have some pretty powerful lights. But the astronaut was also skeptical about the extraterrestrial origin of these lights. One of the most common mysterious phenomena associated with space is glowing lights, but sometimes people notice something more material. For example, NASA astronaut Story Musgrave saw a tube that was flying in space, moving like a snake. He suggested it was a living creature from another planet or something like that. Of course, no one believed him. People assumed that the astronaut had seen some detached part from the ISS or a piece of space debris, like a hose or a tube. But the astronaut was sure that this tube had been moving like a living organism. However, the version with flying garbage sounds much more legit. During the Apollo 11 mission, astronauts reported strange light flashes in their eyes. The members of the Apollo 12 and 13 teams saw the same thing. The strangest thing was that they saw these flashes even with their eyes closed. After that, many astronauts reported seeing bright lights. They saw flashes before going to bed and in dark rooms. Some of them were bright, and some were dim and had different colors. During spacewalks, they repeated every few minutes. Scientists conducted experiments on Earth to figure out the nature of this strange phenomenon. As a result, NASA concluded that the astronauts had seen cosmic rays of an unknown nature. Researchers suggested that the particles of these rays directly affected the receptors of the retina. The astronauts' optic nerves felt the radiation, and their brains reacted to it with light flashes. During the Gemini 4 space mission, astronaut James McDivitt saw a strange geometric object in space, similar to a tin can with a pencil sticking out of it. As soon as the media found out about it, newspapers started claiming that James had seen a ship of another civilization. Then, a few years later, the astronaut refuted this theory. He saw some photos taken inside the ship and noticed the same tin can on it. It turned out that this was the reflection of some bolts in the window pane. By the way, this was one of the many times astronauts confused the details of the ship with some weird space stuff. In 1962, astronaut John Glenn was inside the Friendship 7 spacecraft when he noticed some strange things outside. They looked like tiny glowing fireflies. Glenn immediately reported this to NASA's command post. The dispatchers didn't know how to comment on this message, so the nature of the cosmic fireflies remains unsolved. But then, almost a year later, astronomers found out what it had been. At first, they thought the fireflies were pieces of metal torn off some part of the ship. But then they realized the glowing lights were droplets of frozen liquid that shifted and cracked in outer space. One of the strangest cases in the history of early space travel occurred during the mission of the Gemini 6 spacecraft on December 16, 1965. There were two astronauts, Wally Schirra and Tom Stafford, on board. They were preparing to return to Earth, but saw something strange in outer space. Wally contacted the Mission Control Center and reported he was observing an unknown object similar to a satellite. It was moving from north to south, somewhere in the polar orbit of the planet. The object was approaching them, and the astronauts could see the details. It was an unknown spaceship with a pilot dressed in a red suit. Wally heard through the radio that voices in the command center became tense. No one knew what it was and how to react to the unknown ship. Then, at that moment, they began to hear what sounded like music. Somehow, the song Jingle Bells started playing on the radio. Wally Schirra performed it on the harmonica, and the command center realized this was all a hoax. Schirra and Stafford cooked up this Christmas gag a few weeks before the flight. They wanted to cheer up their colleagues on Earth by saying they had seen Santa Claus in a spaceship. When Schirra finished the song, the guys from Earth relaxed and said it was too much. It's still one of the most famous jokes astronauts have ever played.
About a third of all grown-ups have a snake phobia, but if you decide to become an astronaut not to have to deal with them, it might not be a great idea. According to Story Musgrave, there are snakes in space. Musgrave is one of the most experienced astronauts in the world right now. He is the second astronaut who managed to go on 6 space flights and fly on all the space shuttles. With that much experience and time in space, he has to have 1 or 2 space horror stories in his career. Once on a space mission, he looked out of the window and saw something resembling a snake. Musgrave said it was 6 to 8 feet long and looked like a snake, but many people don't believe his story. They claim it was some trash floating in space or something that had detached from the spacecraft. But the astronaut went on another mission and saw the creature again. The first time he spotted it, it could be some detached piece from the spacecraft. But what are the chances of that happening twice? he gave many interviews in which he explained these crazy encounters. Let's hope those snakes stay in space and don't come crashing down on Earth. If they are real, of course. Snake rain would not be fun. As we all know, space is like a giant vacuum chamber with zero air, and sound can't travel there, making this story even more terrifying. To communicate, astronauts have a special system in their suits to exchange information. Young Li Wei shared his terrifying experience, and it's hard to believe it actually happened. You would be terrified if you were alone at home and someone started knocking on your door at night. Of course, if you weren't expecting anyone. Imagine the same scenario, but you're in space. You hear some knocking, you have nowhere to run, you're trapped in a metal can floating into nothingness. Young was sitting in his spacecraft, minding his own business, when he suddenly heard knocking coming from outside. How is it possible? Sound can't travel in space. The noise was unique. The astronaut described it as if someone had been knocking on an iron bucket with a wooden hammer. Li Wei looked outside, but to his surprise, there was nothing there. He investigated a bit more, but couldn't find the source of the sound. When Young returned to Earth, he was eager to tell scientists about what had happened, but he could not recreate the sound. To add fuel to the fire, his colleagues, who were on the same mission from 2005 to 2008, said they had also heard knocking similar to what Young had reported. This is still a mystery. Nobody knows what happened then. Maybe it was just spacecraft noise, like those your house randomly makes. We've already mentioned that sound can't travel in space, but that doesn't stop weird noises. The Apollo 10 mission was one of the most significant space missions ever. So, astronauts had to ensure everything was perfect before they went on a moon exploration journey. 3 people were on that mission: Thomas Stafford, module pilot John Young, and lunar module pilot Eugene Cernan. They had to do tons of gear tests for the upcoming Apollo 11 missions. The astronauts were circling the moon when they heard music coming from somewhere. It wasn't like Ed Sheeran's concert, it was more like constant loud screaming. Then, it was quiet whistling. They were terrified. Imagine being in space for the first time and hearing weird noises. The sounds lasted for a whole hour. The astronauts had never heard anything like that before. The sound was otherworldly and creepy. When they returned to Earth, they didn't know if they should tell someone about their experience because it was hard to believe. Michael Collins, an astronaut from the Apollo 11 mission, later shared that he had also heard this sound. But there is a kind of logical explanation for this. Engineers from NASA said that the sound that they had heard had been caused by the interference with the communication system. So you can relax and throw your tinfoil hat in the trash. But before you do that, Al Worden, an astronaut from the Apollo 15 mission, said that this explanation was unlikely, so we might never find out what really caused the sound. Leroy Chiao was the commander of the International Space Station in 2005. When it comes to space, he's seen a lot of things that can send chills down your spine. One encounter he and his crew had will live on in their head rent-free forever. Chow was sitting in the space station doing his job when he suddenly spotted light from the corner of his eye. He took a closer look, and it resembled an upside-down V, floating and glowing in space. Leroy later explained that he hadn't been scared by the object. Quite the opposite. He was extremely excited to see it, even though he had no idea what it was. His crew also saw the strange object. Chow was convinced he was visited by something not from Earth. His team could also vouch that indeed they saw something unexplainable. The information about this encounter is all over the internet, and many people are skeptical. It could have been anything. There are more than 10,000 satellites in space right now. It could have been a satellite floating in space. Another theory is that those were lights reflecting from a fishing boat on Earth. But who knows? There may be another logical explanation for this phenomenon waiting to be discovered. Horror stories don't stop there. This one is hard to believe, and it's up to you to figure out if it's true. Astronaut Alan Bean was the fourth individual to set foot on the moon's surface. When he was on the Apollo 12 mission, he claimed he saw a unique shape on the moon. It was shiny and shaped like a shoe. It's hard to know what he saw because he passed away in 2018. Chinese lunar rover Yutu 2 also discovered some shiny substance on the moon. Scientists say it was something gel-like. It could be a glaze that formed when something impacted the moon's surface, like a meteorite or something else. But in the future, we might find a better explanation for this strange find. This may sound wicked, but many countries send animals to space before humans follow them. Take Miss Baker, a squirrel monkey, Ham the chimp, and many more. Many of these animals returned to Earth safely and lived happily ever after, like Ham the chimp, that lived for 26 years. But some weren't so lucky. Astronauts are still creeped out when they see animals floating in space. Imagine seeing something like that in a dark vacuum. No matter how tough you are, after that, you will be afraid of your own shadow. This may be sad, but it was an essential step in space exploration. The following horror story comes from space engineer Musa Manarov. This guy came across something that made scientists confused. He was shooting a video of space when he accidentally filmed some shiny object flying in the distance. The thing had a cylindrical shape, and Manarov thought it was something that had detached from the spacecraft. But he was unsure because it moved in a unique way. When you think of a creepy space story, the first thing that comes to your mind is some creature crawling on the spacecraft, or some weird object flying in space. But all those things are highly unlikely to happen. When somebody asked Chris Hadfield what the scariest thing about space was, he said it was asteroids. There are thousands of them in space, and the spacecraft is constantly getting hit by them. Chris said that he'd always heard sounds from asteroids hitting his spacecraft. He also mentioned that the spacecraft's solar panels were covered with holes. And you never know whether a giant asteroid will come and hit your spacecraft.
You get the last instructions from the team and get into your spaceship. It's the first spacecraft made on Earth that can move at a speed close to the speed of light. Your task is to visit the most unusual and terrifying places in space and send scientists detailed information about them. And so, your journey begins. Your spacecraft is accelerating, and you dash past the moon. In the distance, you see a small reddish planet. It's Mars. And look at that spectacular giant surrounded by a set of rings. That's Saturn. You wish you could have more time to explore this gas giant, but you have to hurry. You pass by beautiful stars. Some of them are luminous, others have a reddish hue, and some seem to be dimming. That's Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky on Earth. It's about 8.6 light-years away from us, but you're traveling fast, and soon you see Polaris, aka the North Star, which is way further, 431 light-years away. Sometimes you manage to spot tiny dots circling these stars. Those are planets. And then, suddenly, you see nothing. At first, you're horrified. Something has gone wrong, and you've accidentally entered a black hole? Has your equipment malfunctioned? Because it seems that at a distance of 700 million light-years away from Earth, there's a hole. A blank void with no galaxies, stars, planets, or asteroids. You can't see anything. The void is a roughly spherical region of about 330 million light-years across. Our home Milky Way galaxy could fit in there billions of times over. And then it dawns on you. What you're looking at is the mysterious Boötes void. It lies about 700 million light-years away from Earth in the constellation of Boötes, the herdsman driving the plow around the North Pole. At first, this void was called the Great Nothing, but later it was given its current name. Now we know that galaxies look like a giant web. Most of them are parts of long structures called filaments. Those wind through the cosmos, and when they meet, they form regions with a high concentration of galaxies. These regions are what we know as galaxy clusters, but between these clusters and threads, there are ginormous empty voids that hardly contain any galaxies. Such voids actually make up almost 80% of the observable universe, and most of them are huge, from 30 to 300 million light-years wide. The Bode's Void is one of the most massive ones. It's even earned the title of supervoid. Astronomers think it might be the result of a few smaller voids merging together. But what could have caused such giant empty areas to appear in the first place? The reason might lie in the origin of the universe. In its early days, all the matter in the universe was packed together quite tightly. Astronomers even think it was something like a uniform soup. But pretty soon, random quantum fluctuations started distributing this matter. Some areas became denser. As a result, their gravitational pull became stronger, and they began stealing matter from less dense regions. This made such areas even denser, and they kept attracting more and more matter. At the same time, smaller clumps of matter started drifting further away from the center, forming galaxies. After staring at nothingness for some time, you decide to explore other space objects and start the engine of your spacecraft again. There's one kind of space formation you've been looking forward to seeing: nebulas. Those are gigantic clouds of gas and dust. With time, gravity starts to pull these clumps of dust and gas together. They grow larger and larger, and their gravity gets more powerful. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? One day, this mass becomes so big that it collapses under its own gravity and forms new stars. So, you decide to visit some of the most beautiful nebulas out there. And you start with the Butterfly Nebula. This butterfly's wingspan is more than 3 light-years. And the structure inside the nebula is one of the most complicated ever observed. The central star, a white dwarf, is heated to an incredible 450,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It means it was formed from a gargantuan star, likely more than 5 times the size of our Sun. The white dwarf is surrounded by a thick disk of dust and gas at the equator. That's what probably makes the whole structure look like an hourglass or a butterfly. The next place you decide to visit is the Eskimo Nebula, 5,000 light-years away from Earth in the constellation of Gemini. It was discovered more than 200 years ago and got its name for a reason. Its double shell formation looks like a person's face hidden in a padded hood of a winter jacket. But in reality, this parka is a disk of material with a ring of comet-shaped objects. And the tails of these objects stream away from the star at the center of the Eskimo Nebula. The bizarre orange streaks in the outer part of the cloud stretch light-years away in all directions. As for the Eskimo's face, even though it resembles a ball of twine, in reality, it's a bubble of material blown into space by the wind of high-speed material produced by the central star. Your next destination is the Ring Nebula. At first sight, it's a giant cloud of dust and gas surrounding an old, almost extinguished star, which does look like a ring. But astronomers say the nebula isn't a bagel, it's a jelly-filled donut. The deep space colorful object more than 2,000 light-years away from Earth is actually a ring that wraps around a blue, ball-shaped structure. Each end of the structure sticks out of the ring's opposite sides. Now you can head to a place called the Pillars of Creation. You find it more than 7,000 light-years away from Earth in the Eagle Nebula. That's a young cluster of stars just 5.5 million years old, space babies. Once, the Hubble Space Telescope managed to take an image of several dark silhouettes near the nebula's center. And now you can see them with your own eyes. Those are the so-called Pillars of Creation, an active star-forming region. And since you've already visited a star-forming region, why don't you drop by a living fossil galaxy? For example, DG-SAT-1. It's as big as the Milky Way, but it's nearly invisible because its stars are spread out incredibly thinly. But what makes the galaxy so unique is that it's sitting all alone, unlike other galaxies of this kind, which are usually found in clusters. It can mean that DG-SAT-1 was formed in a different era, probably a mere 1 billion years after the Big Bang. If it's true, the galaxy is a real living fossil. The next stop on your space sightseeing tour is the Black Widow Pulsar. Just like its spider namesake, this rotating neutron star is munching on its partner, a lightweight brown dwarf star. The more material the pulsar consumes, the more slowly it spins. The energy the neutron star is losing in the process causes the companion star to dwindle. Oh, look at this! That's a stellar nursery in the constellation of Centaurus. But even though this place might be called nursery, it's anything but peaceful or safe. This region, made up of hydrogen and newborn stars, is located in a nebula in the constellation of Centaurus, around 6,500 light-years away from Earth. The intense energy these baby stars emit makes hydrogen clouds glow ominous red. This energy is so powerful that it's eating away dark clouds of dust, and they're disappearing like lumps of butter on a hot frying pan. You're continuing your journey when you see something absolutely amazing, a cloud of water floating in space. To be more precise, it's a cloud of water vapor surrounding a supermassive black hole 12 billion light-years away from Earth. The cloud contains 140 trillion times the entire volume of water on our planet. Astronomers believe this water cloud appeared just 1.6 billion years later than the universe itself.
Something unusual is happening in the skies, and it has authorities and civilians alike searching for answers. It all began in mid-November when strange lights appeared over New Jersey. They hovered in triangular formations, moving with precise coordination. At first, they were dismissed as ordinary drones. But as sightings spread to New York and Pennsylvania, it became clear that this was something more. Videos flooded social media, each showing unexplained aerial activity. Then came the most alarming event: 55 drones emerging from the ocean near Island Beach State Park, following a U.S. Coast Guard vessel in perfect synchronization. Official statements downplayed the events, claiming there was nothing to worry about, that no threats had been identified.
You're telling me we don't know what the hell these drones are in New Jersey are?
But as sightings continued, skepticism grew. Government agencies released only a single vague report, offering little explanation. The lack of transparency fueled speculation and concern. If there was nothing to hide, why withhold information? Why the silence, despite mounting evidence? Then, reports of similar drone formations surfaced in Ohio, Columbus, and Hilliard, to be exact. Their precision and silence matched previous sightings. Notably, they appeared near Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, a site historically linked to classified military research and UFO investigations. The coincidence raised questions. Was this experimental military technology, foreign surveillance, or something else entirely? What made these formations particularly intriguing was the way they seemed to respond to their environment, shifting positions in ways that standard drones could not easily replicate. Theories emerged. Some suggested the drones were searching for something lost beneath the waves, possibly a missing military asset, or even something of extraterrestrial origin. Others suspected they were part of an advanced surveillance program, monitoring movements in highly sensitive areas. And then there were those who considered a more unsettling possibility, that these were not drones at all, but something designed to look like them. The idea that they could be unidentified aerial vehicles disguised as drones sent a ripple of unease through the community of amateur skywatchers tracking their movements. Then came an encounter that defied easy explanations. In the dead of night, on a remote road near Erie, Pennsylvania, a driver captured footage of an object that didn't behave like a conventional drone. It moved with an unnatural fluidity, reacting as if responding to an unseen force. When the footage surfaced online, it was quickly dismissed as a hoax, but those who saw it firsthand were not so sure. Military activity in the area intensified almost immediately. Checkpoints appeared overnight, and reports surfaced of people being questioned and their footage confiscated. Some witnesses described black unmarked vehicles monitoring the area, with personnel who refused to identify themselves. Whatever was happening, it was no longer just a mystery. It had become an operation. As word spread, civilian drone operators took to the skies in an attempt to track these unknown objects, creating a chaotic mix of amateur investigations and official silence. Instead of clarity, the skies became more difficult to interpret, with conflicting reports muddying the waters. Some civilian pilots claimed interference with their equipment, as if an unknown force was disrupting their signals. Others spoke of lights moving at impossible speeds, vanishing the moment they attempted to approach. Authorities refused to comment beyond their initial statements. Agencies that should have been investigating either remained silent or dismissed concerns outright. That, more than anything, fueled further speculation. Was this something they couldn't explain, or something they didn't want the public to know? Adding to the intrigue, a leaked audio recording allegedly captured a conversation between air traffic controllers discussing unknowns appearing on radar.
All altitudes up and down, it's pretty crazy.
Moving at speeds inconsistent with standard aircraft. If authentic, it suggested that these objects were not just visible to the naked eye, but were actively tracked by aviation officials, who, for some reason, chose not to disclose the information publicly. Some believe this is all a distraction, keeping the public focused on the sky while something more significant unfolds elsewhere. Others think it's a test, gauging public reaction to a new type of aerial technology. And then there are those who insist that the real mystery isn't what's being seen, but what remains hidden. If this is a covert project, who is behind it? If it is foreign surveillance, what information are they gathering? And if it is something else entirely, what does that mean for our understanding of what truly exists beyond our own skies? If you have seen them, if you have footage, share it. The truth is out there, waiting to be uncovered.
Wow, the NASA hotline is ringing off the hook. The call center operator is all sweaty from stress. They barely have time to answer the phone, and all the messages they get say the same thing. There's something glowing on the moon. Indeed, hundreds and thousands of amateur astronomers were watching the moon that night, and suddenly there was a bright light on it, as if someone had lit a powerful spotlight on the surface. Scientists immediately began to look for an explanation to this phenomenon. They first thought it was simply the glow of an airplane flying between the observers and the moon, but then it wouldn't have been seen by so many people from different parts of the world at the same time. The next suspects were the Starlink satellites. Theoretically, one of them could have played a cruel trick on amateur astronomers. They could have mistaken the small satellite's light for a flash of light on the moon. But then again, if the satellite were the culprit of this mess, the flare wouldn't be static, but moving. While some scientists continue to search for an answer to this mystery, others decide to investigate the phenomenon in more detail. For this purpose, they have built a new telescope north of Seville, Spain. The conditions there are quite suitable for observing the moon. The telescope has 2 cameras, controlled remotely from the campus in Germany. If both cameras pick up any unusual phenomenon on the surface of the moon, it will quickly zoom the telescope there to see what's going on. It'll also require advanced artificial intelligence to teach the cameras to distinguish between the unexplained phenomenon on the moon and the light of an airplane, a satellite, or a small meteorite that just entered the Earth's atmosphere. While the telescope is doing its investigation, we already have a theory that may explain the appearance of such bright round flashes on the Moon's surface. So, the Moon influences the tides of the seas and oceans on Earth with its gravitational force. But the Earth can affect the Moon in the same way. Only the force will be 32.5 times stronger. While the Moon orbits the Earth, at one point it may be as close to our planet as possible. Then the force of the interaction will be greatest. At this point, tidal forces may force cracks in the surface of the Moon to open and release gas from its interior. A powerful jet of gas will lift the lunar dust with it, and what we see as a bright flash through our telescopes is really just a fog of dust, which is round and reflects sunlight well. If you look at it from a distance, it really does look like a flash. As the dust rises, we think there's been a small explosion, and that flash gradually fades as the dust settles down. These things happen all the time on the Moon's surface. They're called transient lunar phenomena, and besides lunar flashes, much more mystical and bizarre things have happened. Back in 1178, 5 monks claimed to have seen the Moon, being in the shape of a horn, begin to split in two from an upper point. Then fire and sparks began to blaze from the place of separation. It was as if a dragon were spewing flames. In the next moment, the Moon began to pulsate and then returned to its calm state. This phenomenon was repeated more than 10 times, and the flames took different shapes each time. When this nightmare was over, the Moon turned black. It wasn't until the 20th century that scientists tried to explain the phenomenon. They theorized that a large asteroid collided with the Moon at the time, and it was this asteroid that should be blamed for creating the Giordano Bruno crater, 15 Brooklyn bridges wide. But in that case, millions of tons of fragments from the asteroid would have hit the Earth as well, and then people would have seen an incredible meteor shower. It would have been very bright, and the memories of it would definitely have been in the archives. But that didn't happen. Now the phenomenon the monks observed seems questionable. Perhaps they did see an asteroid fall, only it was falling on the Earth itself, and they perceived the light from the burning meteorite as something sinister happening on the Moon. Or maybe the monks were simply imagining things. There's no witnesses to this event other than them. Another unusual phenomenon is the blue and red lights on the Moon. They can be seen when it's horn-shaped, and this occurs most often in the Aristarchus crater. The flashes come and go very quickly, almost like lightning. In fact, this is electricity. Tidal forces are to blame for this too. They cause mechanical stress to build up in the rocks. This can produce an electric field, which creates the blue flashes that have surprised many amateur astronomers. There can also be starbursts on the Moon. We can blame this on meteorites that fall on the surface. Because the Moon has no atmosphere, asteroids that approach it don't burn up. Having a lot of weight and speed, they cause an explosion on impact. And here on Earth, we see it as a starburst. For example, on May 13, 1972, there was a meteorite impact of 1,000 tons of TNT near where Apollo 14 landed. If we lived much earlier, we might have witnessed constant bright flashes on the Moon's surface. All the craters there are formed by such meteor strikes. So imagine the fireworks that were there years ago. And a lot of those meteorites were even useful too. They brought water with them. Yes, there is water on the Moon. NASA confirmed this fact after studies with the SOFIA telescope. It was mounted on an airplane. The observations were made from the upper atmosphere of the Earth. At such an altitude, the dry air allowed the telescope to see even the smallest details. Water might have been in the craters at the poles of the Moon. These places have never seen light, and the water there might be encased in ice. But SOFIA found water on the sunlit surface of the Moon. Of course, it's only H2O molecules that are present in the dust layers, but that's something. If we manage to collect all this water, we'll get very little of it. In comparison, the Sahara Desert has about 100 times more water than we found on the Moon. But an even more unusual phenomenon is happening there right now. The moon is actually rusting, just like a piece of old metal. For rust to appear, we need iron, water, and oxygen. Lunar soil has enough iron in it, and as we've already learned, there's some water too. The last piece of the puzzle is oxygen. Everyone knows there's no atmosphere on the moon, and we can't breathe there, but oxygen is still present. The solar wind brought it there. The wind from our warm star moves at an extremely high speed. It scrapes oxygen from the upper parts of our atmosphere and carries it further through space. Eventually, the wind with the oxygen molecules reaches the moon. Voila! All the ingredients for corrosion are in place, and the iron ore on the surface of the moon begins to take on a reddish hue. If this process goes on long enough, in the distant future, the moon will look like Mars. It will turn orange-red. Yes, the signature color of Mars came exactly from that corrosion that began there thousands and thousands of years ago, when there were rivers and seas with water and an atmosphere with oxygen. Other strange objects that can be seen on the moon were left there by humans. Between 1969 and 1972, 12 people visited there as part of the Apollo program. In all, there were 6 landing sites where the astronauts left a bunch of stuff behind. Besides a couple of dozen satellites and spacecraft that fell or landed softly on the moon, there's a lunar rover, some United States flags, a family photo of one of the astronauts, and even 3 golf balls. And the first 2 people to be on the moon left behind a whole pile of stuff. When they were about to go home, they took a lot of soil samples and rocks with them. And to carry it all away, they had to get rid of everything unnecessary on board the lunar module. The TV camera, the sample collection tools, the science equipment, and even the armrests from the seats. The astronauts stood outside the lunar module for a full 8 minutes and threw out a whole mountain of unnecessary items. If you collect all these objects and debris that we left there by 12 astronauts and put them on the scales, it will show about 199 tons. It's like 3 heavy armored tanks or 3 large passenger planes. Strange, but true.
How do people usually describe planets? Massive, freezing, boiling hot, seismically active. Let's admit it, shiny is not normally on the list. Unless we're talking about a world called LTT 9779b, which might be the shiniest planet we've ever seen. This exoplanet, which is basically any planet outside our solar system, is ultra hot and acts like a giant space mirror because it's covered with a thick layer of reflective metallic clouds. This unusual world is located about 264 light-years away from our planet. And the most amazing thing about it is that it reflects approximately 80% of all the light its parent star sends its way. For comparison, Earth reflects a mere 30% of the light it gets from the Sun. The bizarre exoplanet is even more reflective than the shiniest planet in the solar system, Venus, which reflects around 75% of sunlight due to its thick clouds. LTT 9779b is 5 times as large as Earth, which makes it the largest space mirror ever discovered. By the way, this world was found by NASA's Transiting Exoplanet Survey satellite mission in 2020. But the highly reflective nature of the planet was uncovered later thanks to a follow-up investigation conducted by the European Space Agency Exoplanet Hunting Spacecraft, CHEOPS, which stands for Characterizing Exoplanet Satellite. Now, imagine a planet the size of our ice giant Neptune. It's a burning world floating close to its star. If you stepped on its surface and looked up, you'd see heavy clouds of metals floating over your head, raining down titanium droplets. The planet's size, coupled with its insane temperatures, allow astronomers to classify the planet as an ultra-hot Neptune. Now, a planet's high reflectivity is a quality known as albedo. And in the case of our shiny world, its albedo mystifies scientists. All because most planets that are not ice worlds, or planets with thick layers of reflective clouds like Venus, normally have low albedos. Their atmosphere or surfaces simply absorb the light coming from their stars, preventing it from getting reflected back into space. And initially, researchers were sure that LT 9779b would have a low albedo. After that, by no means was it an ice world. Not with the surface temperatures reaching 3,650 degrees Fahrenheit on the side of the planet permanently facing its parent star. It was supposed to be too hot for water clouds to form. Even clouds of metal or glass wouldn't be able to form in such a scorching climate. Astronomers expected a planet like that to have its atmosphere destroyed by its star, which would leave behind a lifeless, rocky world. That's why discovering metallic clouds was so unexpected. Of course, researchers were eager to find out how such clouds could have formed. It had remained a mystery until they decided to think about the cloud formation in the same way as condensation that appears in the bathroom after you take a hot shower. There are two ways to steam up your bathroom. You can cool the air until the water vapor condenses, or you can keep hot water running until clouds form. It will happen when the air in the bathroom becomes so saturated with vapor that it won't be able to hold it anymore. So, researchers came to the conclusion that most likely the atmosphere of the shiny planet became oversaturated with silicate at one point. And then, metal started vaporizing due to boiling hot temperatures on the permanent day side of the planet. But if you think that the reflective nature of LT 9779b is its only unusual feature, you might want to hear this. The exoplanet is an example of an extremely rare planetary type, and ultra-hot Neptune. Astronomers have been searching for such planets for decades, but those preferred to remain a mystery. The fact that the planet survived so close to its star might be linked to its high reflectivity. Some experts believe that the metal clouds covering the planet probably reflect light and prevent the planet from overheating and evaporating. Plus, such a highly metallic atmosphere is much heavier and harder to blow away than any other. Now, about 850 light-years away from Earth, a planet called WASP 121b orbits its star. This planet is a hot Jupiter, which means it's a gas giant moving very close to its star. And because of such a short distance, the planet is also insanely hot. The average day temperature there is around 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Interestingly, just like our previous shiny world, this planet also has metallic clouds floating over its surface. But that's not the only oddity. WASP 121b has a bizarre oblong shape. Can it be because the planet is tidally locked to its star? It means that one of its sides always faces the star, while the other is always turned to the darkness of the cosmos. In other words, it's always daytime on one side of the planet and nighttime on the other, which causes crazy temperature differences. Researchers think it might be the reason for the metallic clouds. The water cycle on WASP 121b is also pretty bizarre, to say the least. On the illuminated side, the atoms that make up the planet's water get ripped apart by the insane temperatures. After that, they get blown by winds moving at 11,000 miles per hour to the other side of the planet. There, much lower temperatures allow the atom to recombine into water molecules. At the same time, the nighttime side is cold enough for metal clouds consisting of iron and corundum to form. When these clouds migrate to the daytime side of the planet, they vaporize and rain down metal on the planet's surface. But if these clouds don't seem impressive enough, I've got more. Astronomers predict that the planet will rip itself apart in the next several million years because of its incredibly fast winds and wild temperatures. Plus, the gravitational pull of the planet's parent star also plays its role in this dark prediction. Since WASP 121b is so close to the star, the star's gravity pulls the planet into a weird oblong shape and makes gases like iron and magnesium leak from the planet's atmosphere. This pull is so strong that the planet is always on the verge of a tidal disruption. If it ever happens, the planet will come apart for good, metallic clouds and all. Just 20 light-years away from the Sun, which isn't such a great distance when we talk about space, a bizarre rogue planet is roaming our home Milky Way galaxy. But even though this planet doesn't orbit any star, it still has an incredibly powerful magnetic field. It's 4 million times stronger than Earth's magnetic field. The exoplanet also produces amazing auroras. When it was discovered in 2016, astronomers were almost sure they had detected a brown dwarf, which is an object too large to be a planet and too small to be a star. But later, scientists got some proof that the space object wasn't big enough to be a brown dwarf. The planet sure is a mammoth among its peers. It's 1.2 times as wide as the largest planet of the solar system, Jupiter, and more than 12 times as heavy. Astronomers think the exceptionally strong magnetic field helps the planet produce the auroras. But the most curious thing is that they're generated in a different way than auroras on Earth. It might be because the exoplanet's moon helps the planet create these light shows. Another planet you probably shouldn't set foot on is WASP 76b. There, it rains iron on the night side of the planet, and the temperature on the daytime side rises up to 4,300 degrees Fahrenheit. That's hot enough to vaporize most metals. This exoplanet is a bit larger than Jupiter in terms of size and is located 640 light-years away from Earth. Such terrifying weather conditions in this world are caused by its unusual orbit. The distance between the planet and its parent star is 10 times shorter than the distance between Mercury and the Sun.
In 2021, astronomers announced that they had found between 70 and 170 free-floating planets. Such planets are also called rogue because they don't orbit around any star. And the majority of these huge unattached planets, each approximately as large as Jupiter, dwells in one particular region of the Milky Way galaxy. It's known as the Upper Scorpius OB Stellar Association. Wow, doesn't it sound like the name of some homeowners association? Anyway, this conclusion was made by a team of astronomers that used telescope observations from all over the world and in space. They also looked through 80,000 wide-field images taken over a couple of decades. Scientists have estimated there might be billions or even trillions of rogue planets wandering around our galaxy. If their estimations are true, it might mean that the Milky Way contains more free-floating planets than stars. Ooh. This region of the sky is around 420 light-years away from Earth. A lot of amateur astronomers are familiar with it since lots of cool stuff is located there. The most famous targets for astrophotographers include dark nebula, like Barnard 68, Coal Sack, or Pipe Nebula, as well as the colorful region around Rho Ophiuchi. But let's get back to mysterious rogue planets. They wander the galaxy alone, totally untethered. Without stars, they don't have days or nights, only eternal darkness. Of the thousands of planets scientists have detected outside of our solar system, only a dozen or so are starless and cruising on their own. Recently, astronomers have announced one more finding, the tiniest known rogue planet. The mass of this space traveler is somewhere between the masses of Earth and Mars. The term itself, a rogue planet, suggests that such celestial bodies might desert their stars on purpose. They wander off on their own, carving a new path through the Milky Way. But the reality is much more tragic. Rogue planets are usually kicked out of their star systems, doomed to a solitary existence of circling the center of the galaxy on their own. How sad. You see, things get messy when planetary systems, including ours, form. While planets appear from the cosmic dust surrounding a newborn star, they jostle one another around. This gravitational game of pool can easily shove some planets toward the edges of a star system, or eject one or two of them altogether. Then there are also nearby stars that can shove planets around too. Most stars are not born on their own. Clusters of dozens to thousands of stars often appear in space. No wonder that in such a crowded environment, a star with its own set of planets might whisk away a planet or two from another star. After stealing a planet, it can keep it for itself or cast it out into space. At the same time, some free-floating planets might form in a different way, with no parent star to help them. They appear from collapsed clouds of gas and dust, just like stars do. But sadly, they don't manage to put on enough weight to start nuclear reactions, the ones that make stars emit light. These objects are also known as failed stars. Hey, who said they failed? And they resemble planets. Rogue planets are very hard to detect. When astronomers want to find an exoplanet, they look for something blocking the light of its parent star. That's usually the planet passing between the star and the observer. But researchers can't use the same technique with free-floating planets because, in this case, there's no parent star. The only way to locate them is to rely on gravity. Now, imagine a line of sight between a telescope on Earth and a distant star. When an object crosses that line, its presence is likely to bend and magnify the star's light. This, in turn, makes the star appear brighter than usual. As for the duration of this brightening, it depends on the nature of this moving object. If the brightening lasts a few days, it's a star. If the duration is about a day or so, it's a Jupiter mass object. And if it's just a couple of hours, this object is something that equals the mass of our planet. But the trickiest part is to figure out whether this object is indeed a rogue planet. It's true that stars whose light such celestial bodies bend can't be their parent stars. They're too far away. But there still might be a parent star, invisible because of the glare of the luminous star. And astronomers have to wait up to a decade for the luminous star to move a bit to check for a potential parent star. If there's still no parent star in sight, then it's proven. The planet is traveling solo. One thing is clear. Without parent stars to warm them, rogue planets are frozen worlds. Even if ice doesn't go all the way down to their cores, it certainly covers such planets with hard, icy shells. On the bright side, maybe free-floating planets aren't as lonely as we think. They might have moons of their own. They probably take them along when they get pushed out of their cosmic homes. Even more exciting, these exomoons might have liquid water. At least that's what a 2021 study published in the International Journal for Astrobiology claims. Actually, I don't get that magazine, but it sounds fancy. But could a free-roaming world find a new home near a different star? Some experts think it's unlikely. The universe is an incredibly spacious place, and even a large star is hardly able to slow down enough to lasso a fast-moving planet. For example, in 2017, an interstellar guest, an asteroid the size of a skyscraper, appeared in our solar system. It barreled through the solar system and just kept going without stopping or slowing down. But what if it was a rogue planet? Would it stay with us? Astronomers say it's unlikely. If it happened, they would be thrilled, such a research opportunity. But the rest of us would likely be terrified by the implications of having such a neighbor. At the same time, maybe it wouldn't be such a big problem, considering how big and very empty our solar system is. But even without a rogue planet invading our solar system, the orbits of our planets are going to change one day. In 5 billion years or so, the sun will start to dim. It'll begin to lose its mass until its gravity is too weak to hold on to the outermost planets of the solar system. Neptune, Uranus, and probably Pluto might turn into rogue planets. They will slowly drift away, unbothered by the cold and mostly unchanged due to their already frozen environments. And yeah, I know the scientists demoted Pluto as a planet years ago, but it's still a planet to me, so sue me. And what about Earth? Oh, our planet will have a different fate, much more tragic. As stars lose mass nearing the end of their lives, they eject gas and dust in all directions. And since our planet is in the way, it'll most likely get enveloped in this scorching stream and vaporize. But calm down, it won't happen for a few more billion years. And who knows where humanity will be at that time. As for now, astronomers hunt rogue planets with enthusiasm. For example, NASA's Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescope is going to conduct a survey to discover more free-floating exoplanets using its powerful techniques of a wide-field telescope. The stars in our Milky Way galaxy move all the time, and chance adjustments of the telescope can help researchers spot rogue planets. But there's one drawback. We won't know the distance to such a planet even if we find one. There's one more mission concept, cleverly called Cleopatra. It might be able to exploit parallax effects to calculate the distances to rogue planets. Parallax is a shift in the position of a foreground object when seen by observers in slightly different locations. To maximize this effect, Cleopatra might hitch a ride on a Mars-bound mission. It's supposed to place it in orbit around the Sun. That's a sufficient distance from Earth, which can help the mission effectively measure the parallax signal and fill in the missing information for astronomers. As scientists continue to explore the vast expanse of the universe, they've made some incredible discoveries that have left them with more questions than answers. From a scorching super-Earth to a football-shaped world, the exoplanet discoveries of 2022 are truly out of this world. So, hold on tight, the future of exoplanet discoveries is looking brighter than ever. Number 1. New type of exoplanets. Red dwarfs make up over 70% of all stars in space. So, in September of 2022, scientists decided to take a closer look at the small worlds orbiting them. What they found was amazing. New type of exoplanets that were made of half rock and half water, either in liquid or ice form. The researchers suggested that these planets likely arose from icy material and were born far away from their stars, past the ice line, where surface temperatures are freezing. But they later migrated closer in, to where the astronomers detected them. This discovery could have huge implications in the search for life in the cosmos. Though these planets are loaded with water, they might not be covered in oceans. Who knows? Maybe one of them will be the next Earth 2.0. Number 2. Jupiter-sized world. Imagine a planet so massive and mysterious, it's like a hidden Jupiter in our galaxy. Well, we just discovered one of those orbiting a star just 379 light-years away. Just. We've named it the TOI 2180b, and it's got everyone talking. Why? Well, for starters, this planet takes a whopping 261 days to orbit its star, which is much longer than most distant gas giants we've come across so far. But that's not all. The temperature on this world is surprisingly mild, averaging at a balmy 170 degrees Fahrenheit. For comparison, the temperature on Jupiter and Saturn is around minus 280 degrees. It's like a bridge between the giant exoplanets we've found and our Jupiter. But the question remains, how did this planet get to be so different? Scientists are still trying to figure that out. Let's hope that we get some answers soon. Number 3. The Hulk Planet. This world is a place where the surface is covered in molten magma, and the year lasts just half a day. Welcome to TOI 1075b, an exoplanet that's been dubbed the Planet Hulk by scientists. Located 200 light-years away, this super-Earth is one of the most massive ever discovered. Its proximity to its parent star causes its surface to reach scorching temperatures of 1922 degrees. It's so hot that any form of water would evaporate instantly, and the air would be filled with vaporized rock. But it's not just the heat that's impressive, it's also its size. TOI 1075b is nearly 10 times the mass of Earth, making it one of the most massive super-Earths ever discovered. But the mystery doesn't stop there. The planet's orbit takes just 14.5 hours, making it one of the shortest orbital periods ever recorded for a planet of its size. What an exciting addition to our catalog! Number 4. 3 doomed planets. Astronomers made a shocking discovery of 3 planets that are circling in a dangerous dance next to the slowly fading stars. Just a decade ago, scientists never even imagined such planets could exist. These gas giant planets, similar in size to Jupiter, orbit way too close to their slowly fading stars. They're basically walking on the edge. Take one of them, for example, dubbed TOI 2337b. Its orbit will likely send it hurtling straight into the fiery arms of its host star in less than 1 million years. Well, I won't be around then. As these stars enter their final days, they're pulling in nearby planets like a black hole, altering their orbits and potentially causing catastrophic collisions. And as these planets get closer to their stars, their atmospheres heat up and swell, leading to some mind-boggling differences in density. But despite the doom and gloom, studying these worlds could give us valuable insights into the evolution of our own solar system. Number 5. Planet with a barium's atmosphere. These are 2 hot blazing planets, each with an atmosphere made of the heaviest element ever found in an exoplanet, barium. These planets, known as WASP-76b and WASP-121b, are ultra-hot gas giants called superjupiters that orbit incredibly close to their stars. These planets are basically like giant balls of fire, with one side facing the star, cooking at temperatures hot enough to vaporize iron and other metals. But as the hot iron vapor is blown into the planet's cooler night side, it turns into liquid and falls as iron rain. And these planets held a special surprise for us. Barium is a heavy metal, about 2.5 times as heavy as iron. And yet, scientists were able to detect it in the upper layers of these planets' atmospheres. This is truly a mystery and a puzzle we're still trying to solve. Imagine landing on a planet like this and looking at this rain of iron and the heavy barium in its skies. That would be awesomely horrifying. Number 6. The Football Planet. Get ready to have your mind blown, space enthusiasts, because we've just discovered the ultimate football-shaped planet, and it's unlike anything we've ever seen before. Meet WASP-103b, the ultra-hot exoplanet that's more than 1,000 light-years away from Earth. This gas giant is so close to its parent star that its shape is being stretched by the intense gravitational forces. But this isn't just a fun shapeshifter. It's also a valuable scientific discovery. By studying the planet's passes across its star, we were able to measure its deformation for the first time ever. It's like taking a snapshot of a planet in motion, and it's giving us insights into the extreme conditions that these planets can endure. This is truly a great discovery. Number 7. A zodiacal light. Are you ready for a cosmic ghost story? Scientists and high school students in China have uncovered a spooky phenomenon on 3 distant exoplanets. It's called zodiacal light, a glow that's similar to the one seen here on Earth during sunset. But this isn't just some eerie light show. It could hold clues about the makeup of these potentially habitable worlds. Imagine watching the sunset from a dark spot on Earth, and instead of darkness, a triangle of light appears. That's zodiacal light. It's caused by sunlight reflecting off dust particles that fill the solar system, the remains of asteroids and comets. A team of researchers analyzed 47 potential habitable exoplanets named Kepler 69c, Kepler 1229b, and Kepler 395c, all super-Earths, had signs of this light. This discovery is more than just a spooky phenomenon. It could reveal information about the presence of asteroids and comets in these exoplanet systems, which could be difficult to detect otherwise. So that's pretty neat. Number 8. A planet with silicate clouds. Introducing VHS 1259b, not a home video recording system, but a strange and exotic world shrouded in mystery and wonder. A place where the clouds are made of sand and the sky is forever red. This isn't the stuff of science fiction, but a real-life discovery made by the brilliant minds at NASA. This is a brown dwarf exoplanet that's making waves in the astronomical community. It's way too massive for a planet, nearly 20 times the size of Jupiter, but it's not quite a star. It's something in between, a cosmic enigma that defies definition. But what's really crazy about VHS 1256b is its atmosphere. Scientists have discovered that this strange world is cloaked in thick clouds of silicate grains, similar to sand. It's the first time this kind of cloud has ever been detected on an exoplanet, and it's a discovery that's sure to change the way we think about the universe and the possibilities of life beyond our world. And there you have it, folks. The year 2022 was filled with incredible discoveries and groundbreaking findings in the world of exoplanets. But this is just the beginning, as scientists and researchers continue to explore the vast expanse of space. We can only imagine what other wonders await us. So, let's keep looking. Who knows what secrets the stars hold for us next? TRES 2b, or not to be, is a planet where night never ends. And it's not your regular night with stars shining in the beautiful skies. Here it's pitch dark and scorching hot. TRES 2b is a gas giant, roughly 1.5 times more massive than Jupiter, and its surface absorbs light better than charcoal. It might also have a faint dark red glow because of its burning air, which is as hot as fresh lava. Lovely. In the star system of 55 Cancri, there are 5 planets, 4 of which are gas giants similar to Jupiter and Saturn. But the 5th one, or rather the first because it's closest to the star, is different in a most horrible way. 55 Cancri e is so close to its sun that half the planet's surface is a literal ocean of molten lava. The other half is in eternal darkness because it never sees the sun. The planet is always turned to its star on one side. And between the scorching and the dark, there's the twilight zone, a thin strip of gloomy nothingness. That's a getaway spot. HD 189377b, oh, I'm not going to say that again, is the only exoplanet in the orbit of its star. And at first glance, it looks quite pretty, blue and white swirls making up wondrous patterns on the surface. But these pleasant colors actually come from hard silicate particles in the planet's atmosphere, which means it rains glass here. But the worst is that winds reach the speed of 5,400 miles per hour, or almost Mach 7. Well, for comparison, the fastest wind speed on Earth was 254 miles per hour, over 20 times less. Thus, the glass falling from the sky travels horizontally at hypersonic speeds, shredding everything in its path. Better duck. The next system, whose name I won't even try to pronounce, this one, has 3 exoplanets, which are all being slowly destroyed by their own star. It happens because that star is not a regular. It's a pulsar, a rapidly spinning core of an exploded star. It creates powerful electromagnetic pulses in several directions while rotating at several thousand times per second. As a result, the planets orbiting this deceased star are slowly being eaten away and will eventually disappear entirely. Kepler-70, hey, I can say that one, is a hot blue dwarf star that exploded into a red giant some 18 million years ago. At the time, it was orbited by at least 2 planets, the closer of which was a Jupiter-like gas giant. Its name was Kepler-70b, and it still exists, but the overgrown star consumed it and transformed it into a blazing hot rocky world. Right now, it's one of the hottest planets ever discovered. Its temperature is higher than the surface of our Sun. It was lucky to survive spending time inside the star, but it's evaporating now and will probably be no more in the near future. WASP-12b is one of the weirdest and saddest planets out there. The enormous gravity of its star, combined with the planets consisting mostly of gas, result in the star slowly devouring its protege. So pal, what's eating you? My mother. WASP-12b has already taken the form of an egg, stretched toward its merciless sun, and it's unable to do anything with its condition. In another 10 million years, the planet will inevitably succumb to the voracious star's appetite. Hey, you asked. If you ever wondered what it's like to walk on ice and hot coals at the same time, Gliese 436b is a planet that would give you a vivid example. Being extremely close to its sun, the Neptune-sized exoplanet boasts temperatures hotter than a blazing oven, and yet it's covered in ice, which burns incessantly. This ice is much denser due to the enormous gravity of the planet, staying solid even under extreme conditions and not melting away. No list of frightening worlds could do without mentioning Venus, the Earth's evil twin. The second planet from the Sun has an atmosphere so thick and full of clouds that its surface is much hotter than that of Mercury. Volcanic eruptions constantly thrash Venus. Its gravity is almost 100 times stronger than ours, and those clouds I mentioned are not made of water but of sulfuric acid, which condenses and rains down on the ground, adding to the inferno. But even if you were brave, or crazy, enough to try to pass through these clouds, you probably couldn't. The winds up there are as strong as some of the most powerful hurricanes back on Earth. Here we have a very long name for a very, very cold planet. Although the host star is not too far away, it's a small and rather cool red dwarf, whose light and heat barely even reach the planet. The temperatures out there fall as low as minus 370 degrees, which is only marginally warmer than absolute zero. The exoplanet is thus dark, gloomy, and covered in eternal ice that never thaws. I thought I thaw that Thumbworth. Still, if it has a rocky core, it might generate some heat, so there's a chance that deep below the frozen surface, some unknown alien things might lurk. Dimidium, located roughly 50 light-years away from our solar system, is a planet hostile to any living thing on many accounts. It's tidally locked to its sun, which means one of its sides is always facing the star, while the other is always turned away. The hot side is heated to over 1800 degrees, perpetually blown over with winds reaching 600 miles per hour. And that's winter. Well, actually, I don't know that. Despite Dimidium being a gas giant, it has a large amount of iron in it, which melts and evaporates in the atmosphere, creating clouds. And when those cool down, they fall on the surface in the infernal rain of molten iron. That'll test your mettle. Oxygen is usually viewed as an element that might bring life to a planet, but this is definitely not the case for Osiris. Scientists were shocked to find oxygen on this planet, or rather around it, because it's 8 times closer to its star than Mercury is to the Sun. This extreme distance makes Osiris a living melting pot, where anything that could burn will. It's also responsible for a very short orbit of the planet around the star. A year on Osiris is just 3.5 days on Earth. To boot, the atmosphere of the planet is constantly blown and melted away by the heat from its sun. Vacation? Nah, let's keep looking. Karat Exo 3b is neither as hot nor as cold as some of the others on this list, but it's terrifying in its own more insidious way. It's a gas giant similar in size to Jupiter, yet 20 times denser. This makes this exoplanet's gravity weigh down on everything on its surface 50 times more than it would on Earth. Stepping on it would be your ultimate doom, because you'd be immediately crushed by the density of its atmosphere. Karat 7b is another oven-like world. Its day-to-day temperature is over 4,000 degrees. Combined with the rocky surface, it presents an infernal landscape. The rocks on the ground bubble and boil, evaporating in the atmosphere, where they cool down and eventually fall back on the surface in a brimstone rain. The saddest thing about Karat 7b is that it might have once been a gas giant whose atmosphere melted away from the heat, leaving only the scorched core. Dark, mysterious, cold space. Comets, asteroids, planets, stars, and something that's lurking over there, far beyond Pluto. Yup, this could be the 9th planet of our solar system, the one people have been wondering about for centuries. IRAs, which stands for the Infrared Astronomical Satellite, collected interesting data back in 1983. It could be proof that Planet 9 is hiding there. No one knows if it really exists, but this discovery helped to build a model to understand this potential planet better. And in 2016, scientists found out that some small space objects in the Kuiper Belt were orbiting a bit oddly. The Kuiper Belt is the outer area of our solar system. It's a ring in the shape of a donut, filled with leftovers from the times when our solar system was forming. You can find this donut beyond Neptune. The objects in that region of space have weird orbits, almost as if a big body with strong gravity is pushing them away. Knock knock, Planet 9 again. The theory says it might be 5 to 10 times the mass of our own planet and up to 20 times further away than Neptune. The astronomical unit equals the distance between our planet and the Sun. Pluto is approximately 40 astronomical units from the Sun. But Planet 9, if it exists, is 400 to 800 astronomical units away. It would take 10,000 to 20,000 Earth years for this mysterious planet to make a single circle around the Sun. This makes it harder for us to catch this space body. There's a theory Planet 9 may have formed between the orbits of Jupiter and Neptune, similar to the rest of the gas giants in our solar system. The gravitational force of one of the two huge planets probably kicked it out of its orbit. Oh no. Then Planet 9 could get ejected further away from the 8 planets we know about. It ended up as some sort of icy waste, quite small at the beginning. But as time went by, Planet 9 has cleared its orbit of frozen pieces of rock and dust and finally formed into a real planet. Another theory says that this could be a planet another star lost on its way while it was passing near our solar system. In any case, Planet 9 probably doesn't reflect that much sunlight since it's so far away. And astronomers aren't sure where exactly they should look for it. Space is dark, mysterious, endless, obviously. But if we do find Planet 9, it will be the first solid proof there are more planets in our solar system than we thought. Moving on to an interesting exoplanet, located only 90 light-years away from us. An exoplanet is generally a planet located outside our solar system. This one has an atmosphere with water clouds. 1 year there lasts 24 Earth days, and the planet travels around a red dwarf star, which is way dimmer and smaller than our Sun. That's why, even though the planet is 8 times closer to its star than we are to our Sun, the temperature there is similar to that on our planet. This exoplanet has a size similar to Neptune. It's also less dense, which means it's mostly made of gas, unlike Earth, which is made of rock. The average temperatures there is 140 degrees, which makes it one of the coolest small exoplanets we've ever discovered. And the cooler the exoplanet is, the bigger the chance we'll find clouds in its atmosphere. Researchers have discovered more than 4,000 exoplanets, but all of them have been found within the Milky Way, at least until now. For the first time, astronomers may have spotted a planet outside our galaxy. They called it M51 ULS-1. The planet is located in the Whirlpool Galaxy, a distant spiral galaxy 28 million light-years away from us. There was once a huge but pretty young star that got stuck in a gravitational dance with something that could be a dense neutron star, the collapsed core of a giant star, or a black hole. The star's dance partner had incredibly strong gravity. It was feeding on the star, greedily ripping away its plasma. Then something unusual happened. An unknown, maybe even Saturn-sized object passed by and blocked this confrontation from our solar system. Now no one can see what is going on. But this could potentially be the farthest planet we've ever discovered. There's a newly discovered planet outside our solar system. As large as Jupiter, it orbits 2 stars. And, as we can observe it from our planet, it crosses in front of them both. The full circle around these 2 stars, which means 1 year, takes approximately 200 Earth days. On the day of the discovery of the previous planet, scientists also found it had an unusual companion. It's an extra-hot Jupiter with an ultra-tight orbit around its star. The year there lasts only 1.9 Earth days. This planet has a weirdly shaped orbit. Also, it travels in the opposite direction from the rotation of its star. If you could travel 57 light-years away from our planet, you'd see something pink lurking in the darkness. As you get closer, it becomes bigger and more fascinating. Yup, it's a magenta-colored planet. A few billion miles away from its sun, this guy is one of the youngest planets scientists have discovered. It's only 100 to 200 million years old. It's made of pink gas, similar to our Jupiter. So if you could fly closer to its surface, this gas would envelop you like a thick fog. You're coming closer and going deeper, and the gas is becoming darker, getting a reddish shade. And look at the planet's core. It's super hot. Because of its high temperature of 460 degrees Fahrenheit, this planet is like an oven. The heat is the reason the planet glows so brightly. You'll also notice the sky is hazy pink, with clouds made of droplets of frozen water, similar to ours. There's another exoplanet half as massive as Earth, which is one of the smallest planets we've ever found outside our solar system. It has a diameter of 5,600 miles. For comparison, Earth's diameter is 7,900 miles. The planet in question is mostly made of iron, similar to Mercury. Mercury has a massive iron core and a very thin crust, which makes it an oddball in our solar system. At its early stages, it collided with some space body at least once. That collision pulled its outer layers away, which is why only the firm iron core remained. Maybe this exoplanet participated in a huge space crash too. That's what probably took away the planet's mantle and left mostly its iron core. Or maybe this is just a remnant of a gaseous planet that used to be the size of Neptune. The atmosphere of the planet could be blown away by, let's say, a huge amount of radiation coming from the star. This planet is only 31 light-years away from us, and the day there is less than 8 Earth hours long. The planet is only a little bit bigger than Mars. People aren't likely to ever settle in that place because of its extreme temperatures that go up to 2,700 degrees Fahrenheit. There might even be molten lava on the side of the planet that faces its star. Such temperatures are high enough to evaporate any atmosphere, so this planet might have had one in the past. Generally, gas giants like Jupiter can't support life because they have extreme weather conditions, temperature, and pressure, and there are no building blocks that might create life. But smaller terrestrial planets, such as, Earth, have more key ingredients like oxygen and liquid water. Plus, they have more temperate weather and other conditions. And still, not all of such planets support life, of course. It's not easy to find a planet with similar conditions as the ones we have on Earth, or at least the conditions that would allow life to develop there. But meet Kepler-22b, one of our most promising findings. It's 600 light-years away from us, twice bigger than our planet, and with temperatures of about 72 degrees Fahrenheit. This is a so-called super-Earth. It's a category of planets unlike any we have in the solar system. They're more massive than Earth, but still lighter than ice giants such as Uranus or Neptune. Super-Earths can consist of rock, gas, or a mixture of these two. Kepler-22b is within the habitable zone of its parent star, which is less bright than our Sun. The planet probably has a rocky core. It may have an ocean, but it doesn't host any life. At least, we don't know about it yet.
Scientists keep finding new planets they call super-Earths. It's a class of more massive planets than Earth, but way lighter than ice giants, such as Uranus and Neptune. Super-Earths can be made of rock, gas, or a combination of these two. They are often twice or even up to 10 times bigger than the Earth. They're interesting to study, but kinda too far away from us. They're pretty common outside of our solar system, together with other interesting planets like mini Neptunes. Those can also be gas dwarfs, ice giants, or huge rocky bodies. But again, we don't have anything like that. But something we do have that those other solar systems don't? Jupiter. It's the biggest and heaviest object that orbits our sun. This king of planets possesses a powerful force to dominate our solar system. Jupiter is notorious for eating planets. A protoplanet slammed into it about 4.5 billion years ago, when Jupiter was still a young planet in its early stages. This protoplanet was 10 times heavier than Earth and was made of ice and rock. The collision was huge. Jupiter's core broke apart, and helium and hydrogen mixed with denser materials. Through time, the heavy material settled back into the dense core, which is what we see today. And if it swallowed a planet before, it might keep doing it as well. We suspect our solar system used to have many more large planets than it has now. For example, it's kinda empty around Mercury today. Similar areas around many other central stars are definitely more packed with intermediate mass planets, with the size between Earth and Neptune. Our solar system was a chaotic place at its beginnings. Young stars were surrounded by swirling disks of dust and gas, and planets would form out of that debris, something like trees when they're springing up from the ground. Small rocky planets would form in the strong heat and light close to stars, while gas giants would form farther out, where temperatures were lower, which means they could preserve more gassy materials. And even though planets in our solar system seem pretty stable and peaceful today, following their orbit, they weren't that calm before. Some planets didn't have a circular orbit. They had oblong, more eccentric paths. It took them swinging first toward their stars and then farther away. It was like they had been thrown off kilter by the gravity of other planets on their way. There's something called the grand tack theory. It explains things happening in the first few million years when our solar system was forming. At some point, Jupiter, one of the key players here, may have been pulled in closer by our central star. After that, it went back and took a huge cloud of debris. It was like a sailboat when it tacks around a buoy. This kind of messed with planets that were in the process of formation. After Saturn was fully formed, our close neighbors in the solar system cleared out a little. But if the idea about grand tack is correct, Jupiter had grabbed everything in its way, and its migrations had caused more collisions in this area. Jupiter might have delivered some of the water that now fills the oceans we have on our planet. It shepherds plenty of asteroids. From time to time, it sends some whizzing into interstellar space, or amongst the planets in our solar system. It may have even taken part in the dinosaur extinction 66 million years ago. When the huge space rock hit the Earth, it left a crater off the coast of the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. It all caused earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and tsunamis that made a huge impact on all animal and plant life on Earth. No one knows where it came from. We're not even sure if it was an asteroid or a comet. One theory says it may have been a comet that came from the Oort cloud, which is made of icy debris and is located somewhere at the edge of our solar system. It could have been bumped off course by Jupiter and its powerful gravitational force. This way, our solar system was like a pinball machine, where Jupiter, the biggest planet, kicks incoming comets into orbits that send them closer to the Sun. When these comets are near the Sun, they can go through strong tidal forces that break them apart and eventually create shrapnel-like pieces of a comet. That event was a point when our mammalian ancestors started to rule. That means without Jupiter, there might not be us either, nor the Earth. It seemed like our biggest planet came swinging in, destroyed older planets, and cleared the way for smaller worlds like ours. Jupiter may have been the reason why we can't find Planet 9 right now. Scientists believe it exists, and they think it could be hiding somewhere beyond Neptune, but not Pluto. There are 3 zones in our solar system: the inner planets, outer planets, and whatever there is beyond. The mysterious planet could be the size of the Earth or Mars. It swirled among the gas giants before they eventually swept it toward the outer parts of our solar system, or even somewhere into deep space. Jupiter has stripes because of differences in temperature, atmospheric gas, and chemical composition. Scientists used to think the only reason for these different colors was the mighty atmospheric wind and material circulating between layers of the atmosphere. Now we know the light-colored stripes, or so-called zones, show us where the gas rises. When the stripes are dark-colored, they're called belts and can tell us where gas is sinking. Jupiter's moons could also be why the planet is stripy, because they're tugging on its atmospheric convection cells. At the center of Jupiter, there's a dense liquid core made of helium and metallic hydrogen, together with dissolved heavier elements. As we go further from its center, the temperature and pressure inside the planet drop off. That way, the liquid interior gives way to gases from the atmosphere. Again, mostly helium and hydrogen. No one knows how deep this liquid-gas boundary lies, but the planet is probably fully liquid a couple of thousand miles under its cloud tops. Jupiter would still be bigger than some other giants, like Saturn, if we could strip its gases. Jupiter is sometimes even called a failed star, although that's not quite correct. It's mostly made of hydrogen, like regular stars, but it's still not massive enough to start thermonuclear reactions in its core, which would eventually turn it into a real star. In theory, every object could be turned into a star if you only add enough matter to it. If there's enough mass, the temperature and internal pressure will increase and start thermonuclear reactions. So, to turn Jupiter into a star, such as the Sun, you'd have to make it 1,000 times more massive. But to form a cooler red dwarf, you'd only need 80 Jupiter masses more. That way, Jupiter won't spontaneously become a new star of our solar system. But if many space objects with similar mass collide with it, or in other words, if Jupiter eats them, maybe. You never know. But in theory, if it could become a massive star, it would have stopped other planets from forming in stable orbits. It would have also increased the radiation that the surface of those planets get, which is why it would be really hard for life to develop in our solar system. Jupiter is the planet that spins the fastest in our solar system. It only needs 10 hours to make a full rotation on its axis, even though it's huge, more than 300 times bigger than the Earth, and 2.5 times more massive than the rest of the planets in our entire solar system together. But if it got more massive, it would shrink. More mass would make Jupiter denser, which means it would begin pulling in on itself. So it could get 4 times its mass and would still be the same size.
This may look like a scene from a cool sci-fi movie or an astonishing painting, but it's actually real-life footage of Mars, the very planet known for its bright rust color. Layers of rock and dust cover the planet's surface. They consist of iron-rich minerals. That's why dust on Mars is mostly iron oxide. It floats in the atmosphere and creates an orange-red haze around the planet. But Mars has some even more amazing things, like these blue speckles on its surface. They look like a wind-sculpted sea of dunes around 19 miles wide. Astronauts saw these dunes at the northern polar cap of the planet. That's a region that covers an area approximately as big as Texas. The blue dunes, formed by winds, are shaped like long weaving lines. The winds on Mars are relentless and strong. They turn the barren surface of the planet into terrains of grand beauty. These winds are influenced by many different factors. For example, temperature fluctuations to the way the planet's atmosphere circulates. The atmosphere is thin on Mars. That's the reason liquid water most likely can't exist there for any long period of time. That's why, even though Mars is only half the diameter of our planet, it has the same amount of dry land as Earth. A thin atmosphere is also the reason why wind needs to be exceptionally strong and fast to move the sand and form such shapes as these dunes. Winds usually move at 10 to 20 miles per hour on Mars. Anyway, even though the image looks pretty colorful, the dunes aren't actually blue. The bluish patches represent colder parts, while the warmer regions are yellowish-orange. The images were part of a set of photos released to celebrate the 20th anniversary of Odyssey, a spacecraft orbiting Mars. Mars has numerous sand dunes in different locations all over its surface. Some of them formed 1 billion years ago, like the ones in the Valles Marineris region. They haven't changed because both the atmospheric pressure and wind patterns there have remained the same. But some things do change. For example, some dunes get covered with frost. Here, the main dune has a series of dark patterns. It may be because frost comes and goes, depending on the season. Mars has 4 seasons, just like Earth, but they're twice as long as ours. It's because Mars needs around 2 Earth years to orbit the Sun. Seasons are harsher in the south of the planet than in the north. During southern winter, the planet is farthest away from the Sun. Mars moves pretty slowly, and its orbit is elliptical, different from the orbit of Earth, which is almost circular. Spring on Mars is a season with plenty of dust storms that start in one part of the planet and, eventually, turn into huge storms. They become so large, they blanket the entire planet. Each planet of our solar system has something that makes it special. Jupiter, for example, is not only the largest planet, more than twice as big as all other planets combined, but it also has the biggest ocean in the solar system. Jupiter is made of similar elements to the Sun. They're mostly helium and hydrogen. In the deeper parts of the planet's atmosphere, temperature and pressure increase. That's why the hydrogen gas gets compressed and turns into liquid. That gives Jupiter the biggest ocean, but it's made of hydrogen, not water. There's also a theory that somewhere halfway to Jupiter's center, the pressure increases so much that electrons start getting squeezed out of hydrogen atoms. This allows the liquid to conduct electricity as effectively as most metals do. Jupiter is rotating fast, which creates electrical currents and generates a strong magnetic field. But as a gas giant, the planet doesn't have a firm surface. The planet's swirls and stripes are cold, windy clouds of water and ammonia. Jupiter also has the iconic Great Red Spot, which is an insanely large storm with crimson-colored clouds spinning counterclockwise. Winds there are way faster than any hurricane on our planet. The Great Red Spot has slightly changed throughout time and is currently bigger than our planet. It's 1.3 times as wide as Earth. Scientists have discovered that its roots extend more than 200 miles into Jupiter's atmosphere. A regular tropical cyclone we see on our planet can only extend 9 miles from the top to the bottom of the storm. These days, the red spot is becoming smaller and taller at the same time. Jupiter also has dozens of moons and a couple of rings, but unlike Saturn's rings, these are quite faint and mostly made of dust, not ice. Also, there's a salty ocean under the surface of Jupiter's biggest moon, Ganymede. It's hidden below a thick icy crust. It's likely to contain more water than all surface water reservoirs we have on Earth combined. The theory says this ocean is around 60 miles deep, 10 times greater than the deepest point of our planet's oceans. Jupiter and Saturn contain 10 million tons of precious stones. The pressure inside these planets' atmospheres can actually turn carbon into small pieces of diamonds. If you put these diamonds under extreme temperatures and pressure, they can melt. This would probably result in some sort of diamond rain. In the beginning, our solar system was just a swirling cloud of gas and dust. It eventually developed into a spinning disk with the central star in the middle. Almost all planets in our solar system move counterclockwise around the sun. Venus is the only planet that rotates in a clockwise direction, and Uranus rotates on its side. These planets are most likely different because long ago, huge asteroids collided with them and kinda knocked them off their course. There's a chance Venus could be a habitable planet. It's definitely not a place you'd want to live now, not with its sulfuric acid clouds and tremendous atmospheric pressure. It's 90 times greater than that on Earth. Add here insanely high temperatures. The conditions on Venus are very unfavorable for people. At 863 degrees Fahrenheit, Venus is hotter than Mercury, even though it's further away from the sun. This happens because there's too much carbon dioxide in Venus's atmosphere. It traps heat, which causes the temperature to rise way higher than it's supposed to. But simulations showed that around 700 million years ago, Venus might have been a nice place with moderate temperatures and liquid water. Those conditions were slightly similar to those we have on Earth now. Uranus is not a gas giant. It's actually made of ice. The atmosphere contains methane, which makes the planet look blue. It has 27 moons, 2 sets of rings, and lots of ice in its atmosphere. A day on Uranus lasts just a little bit over 17 hours. That's how long it takes the planet to complete a single rotation on its axis. But its tilt is so pronounced that most of the time, either one or the other pole is pointed toward the sun. That's why the daytime length at the North Pole is almost half a year, and a year on Uranus is as long as 84 years. If you lived on Uranus closer to its North Pole, you'd be able to see the sun in the sky for 42 years. That would be the summer. After this, the sun would go down, and you'd have to live the next 42 years in the darkness. It'd be the winter on the planet. Neptune is the most distant and the smallest of the gas giants. The gravity on the planet is similar to the one we have on Earth, but you wouldn't be able to stand on Neptune's surface. It's gas, not solid land. Triton, the biggest of the planet's moons, orbits Neptune in a very unusual way. It moves backward compared to the rest of the planet's moons. Triton is also slowly spiraling inward toward Neptune. One day, billions of years from now, it's likely to get torn apart by the planet's gravitational forces and become just a ring around Neptune. This ring will continue being pulled inward until it eventually crashes into the planet. Pluto is a dwarf planet, and a year there lasts 248 Earth years. But even though it's not even a planet, Pluto still has several interesting things to offer, like floating mountains. Pluto's nitrogen glaciers carry countless isolated hills, each up to several miles across. They're likely to be fragments of water ice from the dwarf planet's surrounding uplands. Nitrogen ice is denser than water ice, so scientists think water ice hills float in a sea of frozen nitrogen, just like icebergs in the Arctic Ocean here on Earth.
The weird thing about Fomalhaut b isn't its name, but the fact that it doesn't exist. It was first photographed back in 2008 and was a sensation. Scientists believe it to be a massive exoplanet, but it turned out to have low mass, and it's falling to pieces of dust at the moment. It acts like a massive dust cloud. Gliese 1214b is quite extraordinary with its steamy environment. Wait, but steam is the result of water evaporation, isn't it? In fact, this hot planet is full of water-like substances. It's definitely hotter than our planet, with its 250 to 540 degrees Fahrenheit. It can also be an ocean planet. Still, very little is known about it since it was first discovered only back in 2009. If you ever wondered what it's like to walk on ice and hot coals at the same time, meet Gliese 436b. Being extremely close to its sun, the Neptune-sized exoplanet boasts temperatures hotter than a blazing oven. And yet, it's covered in ice, which burns incessantly. This ice is much denser due to the enormous gravity of the planet, staying solid even under extreme conditions and not melting away. But Gliese seems a nice place with quite mild climate compared to an oven-like Kourou 7b. Its day-to-day temperature is over 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Combined with the rocky surface, it presents a kind of underworld landscape. The rocks on the ground bubble and boil, evaporating in the atmosphere, where they cool down and eventually fall back on the surface in a brimstone rain. The saddest thing about Kourou 7b is that it might have once been a gas giant whose atmosphere melted away from the heat, leaving only the scorched core. Kourou Exo 3b is neither as hot as the previous one, nor as cold as many other planets. It's a gas giant similar in size to Jupiter, yet 20 times denser. It makes this exoplanet's gravity weigh down on everything on its surface 50 times more than it would on Earth. Stepping on it would be your ultimate doom, because you'd be immediately crushed by the density of its atmosphere. Tres 2b is a planet where night never ends. And it's not your regular night with stars shining in the beautiful skies. Here, it's pitch dark and scorching hot. Tres 2b is a gas giant, roughly 1.5 times more massive than Jupiter, and its surface absorbs light better than charcoal. It might also have a faint dark red glow because of its burning air, which is as hot as fresh lava. It may mistakenly seem that Saturn does have an Earthen-friendly environment. Some layers of this giant gas sphere actually have quite nice temperature conditions. If you dive into Saturn, you'll get to a layer with liquid molecules with 32 degrees Fahrenheit, which seems like Earth. Anyway, it's only one minor layer, and the rest of the planet is freezing cold. So you'll never be able to land on Saturn and be the same human being like you are on Earth. But you can become a sort of snowball there, or an ice crystal. As for Jupiter, you might have already guessed that there's no solid land. This planet is made of hydrogen and helium, so it's another gas sphere you can't walk on. It's a bit different from Saturn, though. You wouldn't dive in Jupiter, you'd rather float on it. This planet is like a giant cloud, and if you ever landed on it, it would be like walking through a super thick fog. The temperatures fluctuate a lot here. It's freezing on the surface. Unlike Saturn, the deeper you dive, the more scorching this gas sphere gets. Oxygen is usually viewed as an element that might bring life to a planet, but this is definitely not the case for Osiris. Scientists were shocked to find oxygen on this planet, or rather around it, because it's 8 times closer to its star than Mercury is to the Sun. This extreme distance makes Osiris a living melting pot where anything that could burn will. It's also responsible for a very short orbit of the planet around its star. A year on Osiris is just 3.5 days on Earth. To boot, the atmosphere of the planet is constantly blown and melted away by the heat from its sun. WASP 76b is another weirdly dangerous planet where it rains. No, not wasps. It's so hot out there, over 4,300 degrees Fahrenheit, that it vaporizes iron. So, it rains iron. It's another gas giant, just like Jupiter. Its extreme proximity to the sun divides the planet in two. One half has a never-ending day, while the other has eternal night. Meet WASP 12b, one of the weirdest and saddest planets out there. The enormous gravity of its star, combined with the planet consisting mostly of gas, result in the star slowly devouring its protege. WASP 12b has already taken the form of an egg, stretched towards its merciless sun and unable to do anything with its condition. In another 10 million years, the planet will inevitably succumb to the voracious star's appetite. No list of the weirdest planets could do without mentioning Venus, the Earth's evil twin. The second planet from the Sun has an atmosphere so thick and full of clouds that its surface is much hotter than that of Mercury, despite being somewhat farther from the Sun. Volcanic eruptions constantly thrash Venus. Its gravity is almost 100 times stronger than ours, and those clouds I mentioned are not made of water, but of sulfuric acid, which condenses and rains down on the ground, adding to the inferno. But even if you were brave, or crazy, enough to try to pass through those clouds, you probably couldn't. The winds up there are as strong as some of the most powerful hurricanes back on Earth. One more freezing cold planet is the one I dare not pronounce. Although the host star is not too far away, it's a small and rather cool red dwarf whose light and heat barely even reach the planet. The temperatures out there fall as low as -370 degrees Fahrenheit, which is only marginally warmer than absolute zero. The exoplanet is thus dark, gloomy, and covered in eternal ice. Still, if it has a rocky core, it might generate some heat, so there is a chance that deep below the frozen surface, we could build a nice thermal spa hotel for space travelers. The next planet that sounds like a tongue twister is the only exoplanet in the orbit of its star, and at first glance, it looks quite pretty. Blue and white swirls making up wondrous patterns on the surface. But these pleasant colors actually come from hard silicate particles in the planet's atmosphere, which means it rains glass here. But the worst thing is that winds reach the speed of 5,400 miles per hour, or almost Mach 7. For comparison, the fastest wind speed on Earth was 254 miles per hour, over 20 times less. Thus, the glass falling from the sky travels horizontally at hypersonic speeds, shredding everything in its path. Here's another name we'll just leave on the screen, thank you. This magnetic rogue planet, let's call it SIMP, has probably the best auroras in the universe, putting our northern lights to shame. Dimidium, located roughly 50 light-years away from our solar system, is a planet hostile to any living thing on many accounts. It's tidally locked to its sun, which means one of its sides is always facing the star, while the other is always turned away. The hot side is heated to over 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit, perpetually blown over with winds reaching 600 miles per hour. Despite Dimidium being a gas giant, it has a large amount of iron in it, which melts and evaporates in the atmosphere, creating clouds. And when these cool down, they fall on the surface in the infernal rain of molten iron. In the star system of 55 Cancri, there are 5 planets, 4 of which are gas giants similar to Jupiter and Saturn. But the 5th one, or rather, the first, because it's closest to the star, is different in a most horrible way. 55 Cancri E is so close to its sun that half the planet's surface is a literal ocean of molten lava. The other half is in eternal darkness because it never sees the sun. The planet is always turned to its star with one side. And between the scorching and the dark, there's the twilight zone, a thin strip of gloomy nothingness. The system, whose name I wouldn't even try to pronounce, has 3 exoplanets, which are all being slowly destroyed by their own star. It happens because that star is not a regular one. It's a pulsar, a rapidly spinning core of an exploded star. It creates powerful electromagnetic pulses in several directions, while rotating at several thousand times per second. As a result, the planets orbiting this deceased star are slowly being eaten away and will eventually disappear entirely.
You know, it's hard not to wonder if there's another form of life out there in the universe when you look up at the night sky. There's this thing called the Fermi paradox. Basically says this: if civilizations that might live somewhere out there in the universe are so common, why haven't we found any signs of them? We've looked really hard, but we haven't stumbled over any proof that there are other forms of life somewhere in space. And we suspect there could be many civilizations, because scientists have calculated there are possibly billions of habitable planets in our galaxy alone. So, it would seem reasonable to assume that some of these planets could have developed intelligent life, possibly even civilizations that are more advanced than ours. So, the Fermi paradox basically says, hey, where's the party? How come we weren't invited? And one of the potential answers to why we haven't found any other form of life in the universe is something called the Great Filter Theory. This theory appeared in the 1990s, and it says there's a big obstacle or challenge that prevents life from being widespread in the universe. It's called the Great Filter because it suggests that there is a filter that most, if not all, civilizations must pass through in order to become really cool and advanced, like the ones from science fiction movies. But so far, there are no signs of other civilizations like that, or even some real evidence of any form of life. Maybe it's really hard to evolve into a complex life form, or maybe it's really hard to develop the technology to travel through space. Either way, it sounds like a tricky obstacle all intelligent civilizations may face, the one that doesn't allow them to make any progress beyond a certain point. It means they might have come to a certain level of development and then something happened that destroyed them, like an asteroid impact or an environmental disaster. Or they could cause their own demise, and bam, everything they've achieved is gone. So the Great Filter suggests there's some kind of obstacle that stops intelligent civilizations from becoming advanced enough to make contact with other civilizations or colonize other planets. This theory presents two interesting scenarios. The first one says that the filter lies in our past and that we have already overcome it. This would mean we have passed the hardest phase and the test in general. Well, woohoo! But it would also mean that intelligent life is relatively rare in the universe and that we may be the only advanced civilization that exists at the moment. So, the universe could really be relatively empty when it comes to intelligent life. That means the chances that we'll make some friends from other planets and visit them in our super cool spaceships are low. Well, that's sad. But the second scenario is a lot worse. It states that the filter could actually lie in our future. We haven't faced this mysterious and pretty advanced test yet. That means there's still a chance for us to fail. If the filter really does lie in our future, it may mean there are many intelligent civilizations out there, but they're all struggling to overcome the same obstacles that we could face sooner than we think. They may be trying to pass these tests, stay alive, and send us a message that we're not alone and that they would like to visit us too. One of the things the Great Filter Theory talks about is the development of artificial intelligence, or AI. As AI technologies become more advanced, it's possible that it could pose a threat to humanity, or lead to unwanted consequences if we're not careful enough with it. There's still hope, though. Not everything is so dark and gloomy. Maybe some civilizations have already passed the Great Filter and are out there in the universe, and they'll manage to send us a message. Maybe a life form that is still not bigger than bacteria is somewhere out there, and they haven't come to the level where they're developed enough to communicate with us. Or maybe we'll be the ones to pass the test and send a message to others one day. Well, either way, scientists are not giving up. They will keep looking for traces of life all around us in space, especially in our solar system. And some of their discoveries tell us we may not need to look beyond our own neighborhood to find signs of life. First, there's Enceladus, a small moon that circles around Saturn. In the beginning, researchers believed it was just a plain rock covered in ice. But in 2005, NASA's Cassini spacecraft took pictures of geysers of frozen water that were spewed from cracks in the southern part of Enceladus. One of the most likely explanations is that there are oceans of liquid water lying under the frozen surface. They remain warm because of the gravitational forces between Enceladus and other Saturn's moons. Water is a key element for development of life, so you never know. Also, scientists have discovered the presence of phosphorus on Enceladus, which is another essential element for life to appear. It's one of the 6 basic building blocks of life, and it plays a very important role in many biological processes, such as cell membrane formation, energy transfer, and such. They believe the phosphorus probably comes from the moon's rocky core and is transported to the ocean through hydrothermal vents. Moving to the next potential location that could contain some form of life, Titan, Enceladus's big brother. It's the only moon in our solar system that has clouds and a dense atmosphere that you'd normally find on planets. And it's the only known place in our solar system, except for Earth of course, that has liquid lakes, filled with methane and ethane, liquid natural gas, but still. Titan is a world that resembles Earth the most. Scientists even believe that conditions there are similar to those Earth had in its early years. Our home planet is closer to the Sun though, so it's always been warmer. Titan might also have an underground ocean of liquid water beneath its surface. Now, we can't miss Mars when we're talking about the possibilities of life in space. One of the main pieces of evidence is methane scientists found on the red planet. Methane is a gas that can be produced by living organisms, think cows, so it might be an important sign. They also have found organic compounds on the surface of Mars, which are the building blocks of life. Another promising discovery on Mars is liquid water. There could be a lake located under a polar ice cap, and scientists believe it could even contain microbial life. Europa is one of the moons that orbits Jupiter. It potentially has plenty of water, too. There could be a salty ocean under its nearly 10 miles thick crust with more water than all of Earth's oceans contained together. There's likely a rocky seafloor at the bottom of this mysterious ocean. The interaction between the rocks and the ocean could create chemical nutrients that organisms, if there are any, need to survive. Europa's secret ocean probably has hydrothermal vents too. Those are basically areas where hot water and minerals are released from the seafloor. These vents support a variety of life forms on Earth, so it's exciting to know that there's a possibility that similar life forms could exist on Europa as well. The problem could be radiation coming from Jupiter. It's really strong, and as such, it can be really harmful to any potential life forms there. Any life on Europa would need to have some sort of shield so it could survive such intense radiation. Let's also check the second biggest Jupiter's moon, Callisto. It has many craters, but it's still one of the most geological inactive bodies in the solar system, with no active volcanoes or tectonic activity. That's why its surface is mostly the same as it was at the time the moon formed, which is why it gives us a unique window into the early history of the solar system. And, you guessed it right, Callisto also has a subsurface ocean that could potentially hold life. Fun to think about, eh?